Hello, we're back. It's the Jack and Joe show. Me, Jack in Wimbledon, Joe Sansom in
Nottingham.
Nottingham. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a bit early for the away game, but here we are. And yeah, I think me and Jack can both admit that the reason this video is a bit late is due to like scheduling reasons, but it wasn't one that either of us were too excited to make, and I'm sure
Mm.
not one that too many people were exactly looking forward to, just due to the circumstances on the weekend.
Yeah, we were both had work commitments on Monday, and Tuesday and Wednesday. So now we finally found the time on Thursday, which is great because it means that we don't have to talk about what happened on Saturday because the podcast have already covered it enough, and no one else wants to hear about it. So what we're going to do today is just give a sort of like where are Fulham right now after the since the last international break. We've lost 3 games, all in
Yeah,
that section. I'm now up to date with my career mode on FIFA 22. I've played up to that, not on purpose. I generally just couldn't be bothered to play on. I'm now 3 points better off than the real Fulham are. I'm on 23 points, sitting I think second in the table. John Mikel Seri with 7 goals already this season.
my
Incredible.
goodness.
Incredible. Joe, not only are we going to talk Fulham today, we're going to talk Newcastle because it's just huge news. I feel like we have to cover it at some point. But
Yeah,
without talking about Saturday, how are you
yeah.
feeling about Fulham going into that massive game against Queen's Park Rangers?
I think it's fair to say nervous. I feel like that is now a very, very big game, more than it was already, just being a local derby, and QPR being, let's face it, pretty decent. It's
Mm.
a battle of two teams in and around the playoffs at the moment. We obviously have aspirations to go for top two. I think, without being disrespectful to QPR this season, they'd probably be happy with playoffs,
Mm.
and that would be a very reasonable return for them. But I'm nervous, and I don't want to talk about Saturday, but it's partly because of Saturday and partly because of some other performances and results that we've had. I would say that only two performances so far this season have worried me. Blackpool was one, and I almost passed it off as a blip.
Mm.
Um, but Saturday's was very poor, and even at 1-0 up, I thought we were poor. Um, and just that the manner of our wins, the Swansea game and the Birmingham game and parts of the Bristol City game, basically everything post international break, as you said before,
Mm.
there's been elements of every single game that have worried me, and sometimes we've been good enough to just get over the line and end up winning quite convincingly, scoreline wise, performance wise, maybe not so much, but we certainly have the firepower to do that. But I wish that we were talking after the first international break when we were taking everyone to the cleaners and
Mm.
we were just looking so good. And I'm very much hoping that once we have Kenny Tete and Fabio Carvalho back, we can maybe start to get up to those performance levels again, because we don't want to be the chasing pack again. We want to be one of the pace setters. And
Mm.
right this second, we're not. We're in fifth place. It can easily change. But I'm far more nervous about the QPR game than I was expecting to be, because, if we win, it's almost like back on track, just about anything other than a win. And, the sort of jittery form is just going on, and we need it to end ASAP, really.
Mm. You, every team in the championship, no matter everyone who's in the upper echelons of the table will go through a blip and will go for a
Yeah,
bad patch. And I'm hoping to God that from Blackpool away to Coventry away, that was our bad patch. And even in there, we had a couple of decent wins against Birmingham and Swansea.
yeah,
Um, I thought the Swansea game we played really well. Mitrovic was just the star man. Um, I am concerned at the performance levels, especially what happened Saturday. The just the manner of the capitulation was enough for me to really get nervous, and I haven't really had time to process what happened. I was with my girlfriend all weekend, and then she went home on Monday, or I think Monday, and I suddenly was thinking about the game more and more, and it was just bizarre. I know we didn't play well in the first half. I get that. But the mistake at the back, the penalty, which by the way now has been, I mean, talk to me about that.
yeah.
That's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. It's one of the most blatant acts of simulation I've seen. Um, I couldn't believe it at the time. I wasn't there, as you know. I couldn't make the early kickoff. I was watching from home, and the way that the TV angle was, you were almost following the player running away from goal, and I just saw him jump over Robinson's leg. And
Mm,
Robinson, naive to leave a leg out, to be honest. The player's going away from goal. I thought Robinson had a very poor game, as did the entire defence.
mm,
Just so stupid. But what really worried me about Saturday wasn't even, obviously it did worry me, but aside from the just awful defending, especially for that spell, it was the fact that when it got to 2-1 or even 3-1, and the entirety of the first half, we never threatened at all. This is a Coventry side that have started brilliantly. They conceded 5 midweek to Luton. Their
mm,
defence is nothing special whatsoever, and we didn't cause them any issues. And that worried me because if one thing we've seen in every game, bar Blackpool and now Coventry, we've troubled every side and we've created loads and loads of chances. That wasn't there on Saturday, and that's what worried me more because, defensively everything went wrong, and I think you can hopefully class that as just an unbelievably terrible day at the office defensively. Like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. It was like Derby away years ago and we lost 5-1. It was just a
mm,
joke at the back.
mm,
You would expect us, once Tosin's back, once, in my opinion, Joe Bryan will come back into the side now, I think
mm,
deservedly so. Hopefully Kenny Tete as well. And then I guess it's up to you whether it's Mawson or Ream at left centre half.
mm,
You would hope that those mistakes are cut out slightly, possibly a change of goalkeeper as well. We don't know.
mm,
And just the midfield and the attacking worried me just as much as the defensive side, is what I'm trying to say, because we've been this unbelievable attacking force all season. Even in the games we're not scoring, we're at least creating loads, but that wasn't there on Saturday. And once again, it was the issue of once we go behind, we can't seem to pull it back. And I almost thought we'd got over that midweek against Swansea. I thought, we conceded a goal, and yes, it was only 2-1. We weren't drawing or behind or anything like that. But we reacted so quickly and we killed off the game instantly. It was like,
mm,
okay, they've got to root back into the game. Let's squash that right now. We're the better side. 3-1, game, set, match. The second half was relatively straightforward against Coventry, against Reading, against Blackpool. It just, once we go behind, we don't seem to know what to do. And that's what
mm.
worries me a lot.
Yeah, that's the worry. I remember QPR taking the lead early on last time we played them at Craven Cottage, and then we did end up winning the game. But look, they've got a lot of threats, QPR, and I'm sure next week we'll probably touch on it a little bit more. The last thing I want to say about Coventry, yes, we missed Tosin and Seri. They didn't start the game. They were both on the bench. It made sense they'd played a lot of football, but it probably just did prove how vital they are to this team. Tosin
Yeah,
was an absolute rock in the early parts of the season, or even so far this season. And without him, and that height and the physical presence he has at the back, we struggled. And yes, Seri wasn't controlling midfield. Harrison Reed, who looked very apologetic at the end of the game. 1-0 at half time, we were all having a great time. I was having a nice conversation with Charlie Cooper down in the concourse and thinking, if we win this, we're top of the league. And suddenly it went so badly pear-shaped. The thing that gives me a slight crumb of comfort is West Brom not looking at their best. Stoke looked very good. Okay, so that's another team to worry about in Stoke. Bournemouth doing whatever Bournemouth are doing. That they're just annoying me at the moment.
yeah,
Underperforming but still winning, and that really is ticking me off because of what happened last season, where Fulham were overperforming but
yeah,
not really getting the results. It's very ironic, isn't it? And the last thing I have to say about Coventry is there was a lot of needle between the fans from kickoff. One man in particular in the home end, and then the alleged racist abuse towards Seb, who I don't know personally. I know from Twitter, but it's unacceptable, and I fully believe that happened. I fully believe something went on there. I could see the corner of the Fulham fans who were close to the Coventry fans were speaking to the police quite extensively about something, and at the time I didn't know what it was about. I thought they were just trying to basically just give it, and then they'll give it back. But from what I understand, it sounded pretty horrendous, and it sounded pretty damning. And I think that more should be made of this. I've never been to a game where where that's happened especially a Fulham supporter, and it makes me feel very sad. And I tell you what, the Coventry fans, yes, you got your win, you won 4-1, fantastic for you, and your home form's great. Your fans was something to that they just they let you down that day. I think especially what happened, the alleged racist abuse. Just the whole atmosphere was toxic. After the game, they gave a lot of needle to us as well. And look, you can give it, and you know that's part of football. I just thought it was very classless, and you could clip this up and say, "Oh, look at this Fulham fan being salty." I don't care. You will be highlighted for what happened in the stands and the alleged things that were said or were done towards our own fans, and that for me is has tarnished the day. You can have your 3 points. I don't care, but that's tarnished it for you, and I don't want anything to do with that club anymore. And I hope when they come to Craven Cottage, we give them a battering. I'm sorry to go off on one there. That really did piss me off. And look, it was a day I just want to forget. It has to be one of the worst away dates I've ever done, if not the worst. No time for a pie to slightly brighten the day up. But Joe,
Oh God.
I know this is Fulhamish, but I want to talk about Newcastle, because
Yeah.
what does this mean for football if Newcastle get this takeover?
It's huge. It's an unbelievable story that's developing, and almost like when it was happening last year, I almost thought it was a bit of a joke. Like all Newcastle are going to sign all these amazing players. They're going to get Pochettino and his manager. I never really thought too much of it because I just sort of thought it won't happen, but it seems to be happening now. It seems to be all but done. I just want to say before I get into it that I can't say I've educated myself very much on sort of like allegations around the owners themselves. I know there's a lot of links to some quite dodgy things going on in Saudi Arabia. I can't really comment on those because I haven't educated myself on that yet. I will, because especially now it's happening. But just in case anyone said about that and why I'm not commenting on it, I don't know enough. But in terms of pure footballing aspects, it's a big change for the Premier League. And I wonder what's going to happen in the January transfer window, because effectively we've now got a club that is 10 times as wealthy as Man City, currently sitting in the bottom 3. They're not going to accept relegation, and they haven't won a game so far this season. If that's still the case in January, you'd imagine they'll start splashing the cash. And there was a report on Sky that they're not exactly going to go after superstars until that's something possible. But, they're going to raid other lower mid-table clubs. You can expect them going in for like Zaha, players like that, star players at lower clubs. And it's quite scary how quickly it's happened. And Newcastle suddenly, I know that you have to earn it on the pitch, but off the pitch, they've instantly become a force to be reckoned with. They have the money, they have the funding that's ready to go into the club, the infrastructure, the training ground, the players they're going to bring in. And it's fascinating to see how it's going to develop, because for years they've been just not spending anything, really.
Going nowhere.
Going nowhere. And I've got to say just one more point on Newcastle before we go to you. I am so frustrated about Newcastle because they have been absolutely terrible this season, just as they were for the majority of last season and the season before that and the season before that. And it frustrates me so greatly that every player of theirs turned into Messi between March and May last season. Joe Willock was scoring every week. He hasn't got one this season. And it frustrates me greatly that happened. I know we still would have gone down. We didn't have enough points. We didn't accumulate enough. And we had a disastrous end to the season. But the way they turned it around last season still baffles me, because I know it's not down to Steve Bruce. I know that he hasn't come up with some magical tweaking, and he's going to be out of a job within the next week or so. But yeah, over to you.
I find this all very fascinating. I remember when Brighton beat Newcastle 3-0. I think it was just before the last international break, and we were sat on the Jack and Joe. Not, it was actually SW6 Central at the time with Jack Stroudley, and I was telling you how many podcasts I'd listened to through Newcastle and how like down in the dumps they were, and I was like, if we can get our act together, we're going to beat the drop, and I think Newcastle will take our place. And then St Maximin came back from injury, Callum Wilson, and things started to click. I remember the game against Burnley; they were 1-0 down, and I was celebrating like a Fulham game, and then Newcastle scored twice very quickly, won the game, and And that was when I genuinely thought that was probably that. And that point against Liverpool as well. But look, let's talk. My take on the takeover is that, like you, I don't know enough about the allegations of Saudi Arabia. I know for a fact that it's about human rights. I don't know, just something to do with human rights, and there could be some really messy things that have happened on the other side. I'm just not sure. I need to read up on it. But Newcastle fans, do they deserve a break? Absolutely. Have they been treated like rubbish by their owner? Absolutely. It just so happens that their new owners might have just done some dodgy things in the past that aren't very very nice. Ethical, exactly, that's the word. What interests me is the most about this Newcastle situation is, yes, Bruce will probably go, but I wonder who they're going to get in as their manager. Who's going to be the one that's going to take them forward into the next level? A lot of people were saying Brendan Rodgers has been rumored to be the link. I think I sent it onto the group chat earlier, or someone did, but I don't see him passing up that chance he's got with Leicester City in the Europa League and the way they're going at the moment. It's fascinating. They're not going to spend money immediately, obviously, like you said. So imagine if they still did have this very average squad and still managed to go down into the Championship. That would be quite remarkable. Just maybe 2 or 3 signings in January, I don't think will change their fortunes too much, depending on who they are. And yeah, if I was a Newcastle fan, I'd be excited, but I'd also be like, let's stay safe this season. Let's get a little bit of solidarity in the Premier League, because right now they're one of the few teams without a win. I don't know. It's very interesting to see, but I think Newcastle fans deserve a bit of a break. There was that piece on with Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher when they played Leeds, and they were in the pub with those Newcastle fans who were just talking about the side and how the fact that St James's Park hasn't had any work done to it. Apparently, there's dead pigeons still sitting there from 3 years ago. Disgusting, and hopefully they get a break. But I don't want them to be this super club that everyone's talking about them being. Although it could happen, Joe.
Yeah, I never want money to just instantly reward. I feel like it's got to be earned. That's why I didn't. I'm not a particular fan of the way that Man City or Chelsea have gone about things, or PSG, but they've done it for long enough. They've technically earned it, I suppose. Now, but you don't want to see Newcastle just go from 18th, wherever they are now, sign everyone's best player that's in and around them, suddenly rocket up the league, challenging for Europe and stuff like that. You don't want to see that unless you're a Newcastle fan. But even then, does it feel right? I mean, I know that in football now, to get anywhere, realistically, even though it's sad to say, you have to have money. You have to. You can't get to the Premier League and not invest. If you're a Championship club, you can't then move on to the next step without investing. Of course, you can bring through your own, and that will get you so far, but you have to invest realistically. It's very interesting to see, because when it was happening for Chelsea, I was too young. When it was happening for Man City, I half remember it. I was old enough to remember them suddenly signing these big players and suddenly finishing higher and higher up the league, and then eventually winning it for the first time, winning the cup for the first time. But it's interesting now to see it happen start to finish, and I want to know what happens. I want to know how quickly it takes to turn Newcastle back into a force, and if it will happen whatsoever, because it's not a given. You can sign the best players in the world. It doesn't mean you're suddenly going to finish first in the league. It might not happen, but the size of the wealth makes this very interesting, because this is more wealth than the Man City owners. This is 10 times that.
Unbelievable.
It's unbelievable to think of. And the size of the club, they're well supported. I think their supporters do deserve a bit of a break, as you said. They follow them through thick and thin. From a neutral point of view, very interested to see what happens, and very interesting to see what the owners do if they're still in this sort of relegation mire in January.
You're right. It's not a given that money is going to automatically bounce them up into the top 4, because you've got Premier League teams with the Premier League money that they've got from obviously competing in the Premier League over the last 3 or 4 years, just making teams stronger and stronger. You've got your Chelsea, Man City, United, Liverpool, but then you've also got the likes of Leicester, West Ham, who right now I feel like are surpassing the likes of Arsenal and Spurs in
Yeah,
their
yeah,
potential,
completely. Yeah.
whereas Arsenal and Spurs are completely regressing. So where do Newcastle fit in all of that? I wonder in 2 or 3 years' time. That will be interesting to see. But like I said, they have to stay up this season. They have to get rid of Bruce and bring in someone who knows what they're doing, and is a good. I just wonder what manager that will be. That's so interesting to a Chris Wilder maybe, but I think he'd probably not.
They're probably looking higher than that, aren't they? If
Mm.
they're coming in with big expectations.
And of course, before we finish, Claudio Ranieri is back in the Premier League, and this
Yeah,
does wind me up, Joe.
yeah,
Um, it seemed to have been forgotten that Claudio Ranieri basically relegated Fulham, and no, he won the league with Leicester. Let's brush that under the carpet. What he did with Fulham, he's back at Watford, dilly ding, dilly dong, and it's all very boring and quite tedious.
yeah. I do think because it does frustrate me greatly. I do think this Watford team and squad suits his style more than Fulham did by so far. The
Mm,
fact they're basically set up for counter-attacking football, fast players on the break, front three of Dennis, Sarr, Josh King.
mm.
Whereas we had Mitrovic, Kearney on the wing. It didn't
Trailer.
work, and let's face it, it's his fault that it didn't work because he chose to change to that system. He didn't have to do that. He wasn't the right guy to bring in at the time for us. Could he do it for Watford? Possibly, but I would hope that he's improved his skills since he was at us because, yes, the players didn't suit his system, but you've got to alter the system to fit the players. And he never did that. And he had 3 or 4 months to do it. Never even looked close to changing things. And the one game where we played really well under him, Brighton, is when we basically just discarded his style of play and decided to play possession-based attacking football. So
because we were 2-0 down anyway.
because we were 2-0 down playing his style. So very interested to see what happens. Wouldn't surprise me if he actually did okay there. Equally, wouldn't surprise me if he just did terribly. It's one of those where I don't know what to make of it. But you would think on the face of it, he won't do as bad as he did with us because that's pretty much impossible, isn't it?
I like this Watford team. I think they've got a lot about them. And to go to Carrow Road in that massive 6-pointer or relegation, whatever game, and pull off the performance they did and score the goals they did on the break. Well, were they on the break? I suppose, yeah. I'm impressed with them and I really like them this season. And if I could choose 3 teams to go down, and I don't think Brentford are going to be in that because they're flying high and that's very disappointing to see. But not surprising. I wouldn't pick Watford. I'd like to see Watford go down. I'd probably pick Norwich, Burnley, and Newcastle. Interestingly enough, and that again is another. Watford now with this new manager. Are they going to get a manager bounce? What's that going to mean for the likes of Newcastle and Burnley if they can't get their wins together? Norwich are still without a win as well, just 1 point on the table. I don't know why we spent the most of this video talking about the Premier League.
Probably because Fulham was just quite grim to talk about this week, isn't it? Yeah.
I really didn't want to do this. I didn't want to sit here and talk Fulham, and that's a real shame to say that in a championship season where I remember saying pre-season that you're going to have a run of games where you're going to lose 2 or 3 on the bounce, which we haven't done. But a big loss is going to make you feel very depressed, and I tell you, I have felt very depressed since that Saturday game. I think it's been honestly atrocious. I only just about watched the highlights back a couple of days ago, and I have to say I'm horrified. What was Josh Onomar doing?
No.
What was he doing? If Tim Ream was there, just give him the space to play the ball back. I don't know why he's trying to take the ball off him.
No.
It's like he's trying to tackle his own player, Joe.
Yeah, well, he did it, didn't he? Very successful. It's probably the only tackle he did all game. He was awful, which is a shame because he's had a great season so far. Just really didn't perform as, to be honest, most of the team didn't. Most of them were anonymous, including Onoma. So
Anonymous.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll be back next week to preview QPR in more detail because I feel like I just need some time to get over whatever happened on Saturday.
And let's face it, when we come back to Fulham, it's a big week. QPR, then Cardiff at home, then Forest away, then West Brom. So it's a huge week and a half. And it's one of those where if we get our acts together now, we could really reap the benefits. We could really start to try and push ourselves into that top 2 and get away from some of these teams.
And of course, Bournemouth are still unbeaten as well, so that's not
Yeah.
very fun. This whole season so far, it's been quite fun, but there's a few things that are annoying me, like they do every season anyway. Um, Hopefully next week against QPR, we could have a QPR guest on. We just don't know yet. We'll see closer to the time. So that'll be interesting to talk QPR because I think they've been quite an interesting team so far this season. Joe, any final thoughts before we wrap it up and say goodbye?
No, nothing. Just never really want to think of the Coventry game again.
Mm.
Onwards and upwards to QPR, which is a game that I always look forward to either way. I'm looking forward to previewing it next week and very excited to be back at the cottage to see it.
Yeah, back to the cottage. Another 12:30 game.
Yeah, it's a shame.
It is worth to. Why on earth Sky have picked us for 12:30 at Preston away?
Yeah,
I have no idea.
I've heard.
I looked at it and thought, right, well, how am I going to get up there then? And I have to stay overnight with one of my brothers up in either Sheffield or Manchester, and then trudge back on Saturday afternoon or evening. It's just a pain in the arse, and I don't know why they've done that, but this is the Championship. This is what happens. You have to roll the punches, and the good thing about losing a game 4-1 is that we've got a chance to react against our rivals.
Yeah,
And then we've got a game against Cardiff, who are really struggling at the moment. Mick McCarthy needs a win.
yeah,
And then Forest, who are just about picking themselves up after Steve Cooper came in. So very interesting stuff. Joe, thanks very much for being here.
yeah. Thanks a lot, Jack.
Yeah, we'll see you next week. This has been less Fulham, more what's going to happen at Newcastle United. Maybe I'm just getting the teams mixed up as we're both black and white. But we'll see you later. And thanks very much for watching.